We begin this news hour in Central Africa and the Democratic Republic of Congo, where there's been confirmation of a case of Ebola in a city of more than 1 million people, Mbandaka. The current outbreak in the northwestern part of the DRC, which is known to have claimed 23 lives so far, has been confined to a largely rural area. But news that it spread to Mbandaka, an urban centre 130 kilometres away, with all the threat that presents for a wider contagion, has set alarm bells ringing. The city is a major transportation hub with routes to the capital, Kinshasa. The World Health Organization says it's convening an emergency meeting to decide whether to declare a public health emergency of international concern. Ebola devastated Sierra Leone, Liberia and Guinea when it broke out in West Africa in 2014, claiming more than 11,000 lives. The WHO and other international health organizations were accused of a rather flat-footed approach to the crisis during that outbreak. Now to West Africa, where a Ghanaian man is leading a campaign to have the Gambia's former leader Yahya Jammeh tried over the murder of 55 migrants who were mistaken for coup plotters. The former president is currently in exile in Equatorial Guinea. In 2005, while he was still in power, a group of migrants planning to go from West Africa to Europe boarded a boat in Senegal, which drifted southwards to the Gambia. Aboard were 45 Ghanaians and 10 Nigerians. They came ashore in the Gambia, were arrested and accused of being part of a coup plot. After about a week, they were taken in groups into the forest and executed. Now, for the past 13 years, Martin Chere, the sole survivor of this group, has been leading a campaign to draw attention to their terrible plight. His lawyers believe there is a strong case to demand the extradition of Yahya Jammeh because of new evidence that he was directly involved in ordering the killings. Well, the African Affairs analyst and publisher of Africa Briefing, John Ofe-Ansah, has been closely following the story, and he joins me now live from our studios in London. And I might point out, John, that you are, of course, originally from Ghana. Just talk us through the people who were killed and what happened to them.
This were a group of about 56 young West African men who were trying to migrate to Europe, in search of greener pastures. They boarded, like you said, a boat, in Senegal, which ostensibly would have taken them across the Mediterranean into Europe. But I think they ran out of fuel, so the boat drifted, to the shores of the Gambia, right? And these guys were arrested. The Gambian authorities at that time thought they were mercenaries, engaged or hired to come and to go and stage a coup plot against Yahya Jammeh. So these guys were arrested, detained, and about a week or two later, they were driven into the bush, right, and executed. And one of them, this Ghanaian man, Martin Chere, managed to jump off the pickup truck that was taking them to their execution in the forest. And he managed to jump off the pickup truck and run into the bush. And about 3 days, found some people who directed him to the Senegalese border, where he went on to Senegal and eventually made his way back home. And it's I don't know if it's a divine intervention, on his part, but he has vowed never to rest until, Yahya Jammeh, and his cohorts are brought to justice. After the executions, there was a lot of noise created. There was a lot of protests, and the Ghana government at that time, sent a delegation headed by the then foreign minister, who is now Ghana's president, Nana Akufo-Addo, to go and investigate. But they encountered one bureaucratic block after another, brick wall after brick wall. So they went home empty-handed. And eventually, the United Nations and the ECOWAS sent up a joint investigative mission to the Gambia to investigate it. But by which time, all evidence had been eliminated. But the Gambia, the UN ECOWAS, commission reported that the government was not complicit, in the execution of these 56 men. But the execution was done by some rogue elements within the security forces. But now, after extensive, with the new government in Gambia, right? I mean, the way was open for fresh investigations to be conducted, and it has been established that the Human Rights Watch, which is a campaign group, and another campaign group called Trial International, interviewed a number of security operatives in Gambia, about 30 of them who were actually implicated, who were part of the execution squad.
Right. John, I need to interrupt you, I'm afraid. I need to interrupt you. I mean, that's a very interesting story, but I mean, we have other questions to ask you. You see what I mean? It's not a monologue, it's a dialogue. Now, Mr. Chere wants to see Yahya Jammeh extradited and prosecuted. How likely is that? Because his lawyers and the international human rights campaigners who support Mr. Chere believe there is a strong case to demand Mr. Jammeh's extradition. Briefly, is that what your assessment is?
Yes, they have a case. I mean, there's a strong case, for Jammeh's trial. I mean, there's a precedent. I mean, the former Chadian president, Hissan Habre, was tried in Senegal and sentenced to life for similar atrocities committed in Chad. But the problem is, Yahya Jammeh is now in exile in Equatorial Guinea, right? And the president of Equatorial Guinea said earlier this year that if any charges were brought against Jammeh, the Equatorial Guinea's president would let his lawyers examine those charges, and if need be, he will be extradited. But a week later, the Equatorial Guinean president said that he would not do that. He would not extradite Yahya Jammeh because he's a former head of state, and that the case must be made for former African heads of state who go into exile to feel safe. So. Yes, there's a case for his trial, but if he will be allowed to be extradited from Equatorial Guinea to Ghana, that is another matter.
Well, Mr. Jammeh, as you said, went into exile in Equatorial Guinea. In 2017, it was a deal brokered by a host of countries, including Morocco and the regional body ECOWAS. So a prosecution would essentially undermine that deal. And the question is whether it will be possible for that deal to be overturned. But the world, of course, John, is changing. I mean, from the days when you had the likes of Mobutu Sese Seko, who fled from Zaire to Morocco and died happily there. You have Mengistu Haile Mariam, the former Ethiopian leader, who is now living in Zimbabwe and is still living there. But then you have Charles Taylor, who was extradited from Nigeria to Sierra Leone and Liberia and eventually faced trial at the International Criminal Court. So leaders now being brought to justice as a result of pressure from victims and their legal representatives.
Yes, in the case of, let me use Charles Taylor's example. I quite remember Charles Taylor was more or less kidnapped, from Nigeria to Sierra Leone and then to the UK, where he's languishing in jail now. But Yahya Jammeh is now the guest in quotes of the Equatorial Guinea authorities, right? So even if a case, a prima facie case is established against Yahya Jammeh, it will be up to the the Equatorial Guinean authorities to agree to his extradition. So short of, some people being able to sort of do a chatela on him, that is kidnapping him to be sent to Ghana, I don't see Yahya Jammeh actually facing justice in the very foreseeable future.
John Ofei-Ansah, the African Affairs analyst and, of course, the publisher of Africa Briefing. Thank you very much indeed.